Hi, welcome back to Elizabeth Ann Reads. I'm Anne, and today let's talk about some historical fiction. So in the month of February, there are actually two historical fiction readathons happening, and I thought I would kind of loosely participate. I'm very much not setting TBRs this year, at least so far, but I do have a lot of historical fiction on my physical TBR shelf, so I thought this would be a good opportunity to kind of make it a priority for a month and see how much I can knock off my shelf. So I did pick out some books that are kind of at the top of my priority list that do meet the prompts for the both readathons, but I'm not necessarily going to stick with that. I'm just going to show you kind of what's on my radar for the month, and then, I may choose something completely different to read. But let's talk about the historical fiction that I am tentatively planning on getting to this month. So the two readathons that are happening are the Historathon, which is hosted by Amanda over at the Curly Reader and Sarah at Sarah's Nightstand, and this runs for the entire month. And there are 9 prompts. Well, it's like a tic-tac-toe board, so there's 9 squares with different prompts. And then the Historical Fictionathon is hosted by Bree over at Call Me After Coffee and a couple other people I can't remember, but I'll link all the info for both readathons below. And the Historical Fictionathon, runs from February 9th to the 23rd. So it's those couple weeks kind of in the middle of February. And that one has 6 prompts. So I think between the two readathons, that's 15 prompts. And I think I've found 5 books that will cover all 15 of those prompts. So those are kind of the top of the priority list, and then I'm going to show you a few other books that I may get to this month as well. So let's start with the Historathon. And again, this is the one with the tic-tac-toe board, so there's 9 squares. So let's talk about what I have tentatively picked out to read. The first square is a book with a male on the cover, and I picked out We Were the Lucky Ones by Georgia Hunter. This is one that just got added to my physical TBR, I think in December, pretty recently. This is a historical fiction. They're all historical fiction. This is World War II, and I believe Georgia Hunter based it on her grandparents' story, I think. But I've heard really, really good things about this, and I definitely want to get to it, and it has a male on the cover. The next square is a book set before 1900. So I pulled a middle grade off my shelf, Fever 1793 by Laurie Halse Anderson. This follows the cholera epidemic in Philadelphia in 1793. So that is obviously before 1900. This, again, is kind of a new acquisition. I got it just this month. So, yeah, but I figured some middle grade would be good to throw in there so I don't get too overwhelmed with lots of dense, heavy historical fiction. The next prompt is a book with dual timelines. So I have Next Year in Havana by Chanel Cleaton. This is set, I want to say, in 1958. Yeah, with the present-day dual timeline. And I don't really know much about it, but yeah, dual timeline. All right, the next square is a book set outside the US or Europe. And again, Next Year in Havana. This is set in Cuba, so that meets that prompt. The middle square on the bingo board is the group read, which is Fountains of Silence by Ruta Sepetys, and I have that on hold at the library. I just need to go pick it up this week. So I am planning on reading that. Ruta Sepetys, I've never read her before, but she is on my list of authors I wanted to try this year. So this is a good chance to do that. I've heard it reads quite fast. The chapters are very short, so I'm looking forward to that. The next square is a book with a child as a character. I'm counting Fever 1973 for that because since it's middle grade, I'm assuming it follows someone fairly young. And then a book with a time or event you are unfamiliar with. So both of these, Next Year in Havana and Fever 1973, would count for that. Because, my history is not great. I like to think it is. I've read, I'm somewhat familiar with World War II. And I spent quite a bit of time reading historical fiction set during the time of Henry VIII. But that's about it. So, yeah, I definitely need to expand on my knowledge and understanding of history. All right, the eighth square is a book with a real historical person, and I'm pretty sure Fountains of Silence features a real historical character, so it would count for that. I'm guessing this one might too. I don't know, but maybe. But I know someone said Fountains of Silence does, so we're just going to go with that. And then the ninth square is location in the title, a book with a location in the title, and again, next year in Havana, because Havana is a location. So those are the 9 prompts for the Historathon. This is the one that goes the whole month. Then let's jump over to the Historical Fictionathon, which runs again February 8th to 23rd. And there are 6 prompts for this one. The first prompt is Time Traveler's Wife, a book set during your favorite time period. Again, I kind of mentioned I read a lot of World War II. I know that's everyone's favorite time period. But I also really enjoy the kind of the Tudor era of England. So, but for simplicity of not having a huge stack of books to read, we're going to go with World War II, and We Were the Lucky Ones will count for that as well. The second prompt is Friendship, a book with 2 or more people on the cover. We Were the Lucky Ones. Prompt number 3 is St. Valentine, which is a historical romance. I actually pulled out the Scarlet Pimpernel by Baroness Orczy. This is a classic, but it is kind of an adventure war story, but it does have a romance in it. And this is, even though it's a classic, it is historical fiction. It was written in the 1800s, and it's set in the mid-1700s. So, yeah, we're going to count that, but I'm reasonably, I'm going to make an educated guess that Next Year in Havana would also count for historical romance. All right, film noir, a book with a movie adaptation. We're going back to the Scarlet Pimpernel for that one because it has a great adaptation, which I've seen multiple times and will probably watch again after I read the book. Prompt number 5 is All is Fair in Love and War. Read a wartime novel. Again, We Were the Lucky Ones. And then the last prompt for this readathon is Back to the Future, a classic or retelling. And again, we have the Scarlet Pimpernel. So that covers all 15 prompts with these 5, counting Fountains of Silence, which I don't physically have yet. That's covering all 15 prompts for both readathons. Which I was pretty happy, actually. So that's all I need to read this month. But then I'm going to show you a few other things that I have that are kind of high on the priority list and may get swapped out for some of these. I don't know. But these are other things I'm thinking about this month. So if I really like Fountains of Silence and I want to do more Rue de Sepetys, I have both Between Shades of Grey and Salt to the Sea. I could just marathon them all this month, which would be fantastic. I also have The Light Between Oceans by M.L. Stedman. This is set in Australia and follows a family or a couple that finds a baby, basically, and starts to raise it as their own, and then it gets complicated. I think its original family comes looking for it. I don't know exactly, but yeah, that's one I've been wanting to read for a while, and it would work for the set outside the US or Europe prompt, because it's set in Australia. I also have The Butterfly and the Violin by Christy Cameron. This is one that Krista over at Books and Jams has talked about recently. And this is a World War II novel as well, but it deals with a musician, which I always love books that feature musicians. And yeah, so I picked this up recently from Book Outlet and thought I'd throw that in the stack. This, I'm sure, would also count for the romance prompt. Then I have a couple rereads that are kind of on my radar for the month. The first is The Long Winter by Laura Ingalls Wilder. I have been doing a reread of the Little House series, a very slow reread. It's been going on for 3 years now. But I would like to continue, and I would like to read this one while it's still winter. And this would work for multiple prompts, including the 2 or more people on the cover, as well as the real historical person. This would be a good option for that. So, yeah. This and set before 1900. So this would meet several prompts as well if I decided to go with this one. And then the other one I have is Christie by Catherine Marshall. This is set in the early 1900s and follows it's loosely based, I believe, on Catherine Marshall's grandmother. And it follows a young woman, a fairly privileged young woman who was raised in kind of the big city, and she's still quite young, she decides to go be a teacher at a little backwoods community in the Appalachian Mountains. Backwoods meaning extremely backwoods, where, large families live in a tiny little shack, and it's fight for survival, basically. And I've read this multiple times. This also has a TV series, I guess, based off of it. So that would work for that prompt as well. But yeah, it's one I've been wanting to reread for a while, and a couple people have read it recently. Can't remember who, but a couple people read it recently. Kate Howe and someone. And yeah, it's a book I really, really enjoy. It's been several years since I've read it, so I would like to pick that up possibly this month. So let me know down below if you're participating in either of those readathons, what you're planning on reading, if you've read any of these books before, what you think I should get to for sure. Yeah, and that's it. So thank you for watching.